My job today is to provoke you. And at the end of this presentation, I want you to disagree with this presentation, because this wouldn't be a conversation around the future and disruption unless you disagree with me. So come up to me afterwards and please tell me what you disagreed with. So in 2026, the best and the truest AI agent is this thing called Claude Code by a company called Anthropic. It is the closest thing to a true AI agent. It's autonomous, it can orchestrate entire workflows, and over the last number of weeks, I've been playing with this and it's been absolutely game-changing. It's like having 10 people on my team at my fingertips. And I want to show you an example of how you could use Claude Code in healthcare simulation. And so the first thing that I did is I asked Claude Code to create a folder on my computer called healthcare simulation. And then I gave it a project description. So I said, hey, take a look at some of the best practices in healthcare simulation. And it's always great to start with a project so that it understands what it's looking at. So I created this Claude project for it so it understands what it needs to do. And then I asked it to go off and create some work for me, some work documents and also some PowerPoint decks related to every part of healthcare simulation. And then it actually goes off and it starts to execute on some of those ideas. And then what it ended up doing is connecting with other APIs. It started to create these folders for me, which is great, and all these different templates. It also created these incredible PowerPoint decks for each part of it. Not just one PowerPoint deck, multiple PowerPoint decks. It also created an application for me that's a sim center, and it can take different scenarios, patient scenarios, and run me through different scenarios. And at this point, looking at this, the fact that this Claude Code can do this is absolutely ridiculous that it can do this today. And as it turns out, in 2026, the most dangerous skill in the world is just coming up with an idea. You know, I'm inspired to be here today, this morning. We just heard Yvette talk about, the endowment of this lecture, which is Michael Gordon, Dr. Michael Gordon. To me, Michael Gordon is like Michael Jordan of simulation. He is one of the greatest innovators in this space. And in 1968, Dr. Gordon created Harvey. And Harvey changed everything. His insight was incredibly simple, that skills should be engineered, not left to randomness. And it was an incredible innovation in 1968, and it changed the world of simulation forever. And I thought to think to myself, I wonder what Harvey would look like in 2026 in a agentic world. So the first thing that I did, by the way, of course, I wanted to make Harvey a little bit more lifelike. So I went to Google's Gemini's Nano Banana Pro, and I said, hey, turn this into a real life guy. And I guess this is what Harvey actually looks like in real life. And I turned it into a video. So that's the first thing that I did. And then the next thing that I did is I created Harvey into an AI agent that's 24/7, always on. I can ask it anything that I want. And this is a live demo of this Harvey AI agent that I can show you right now. Hey, Harvey, I just want to know, you came into the hospital. How are you feeling? Any symptoms? What's going through your mind right now?
I feel short of breath, especially when I lie flat. There's a tightness in my chest, and my heart feels like it's working harder than it should. It's been gradually worsening over the past few weeks. At first, it only happened when I was walking uphill. Now it happens even at rest.
Can you just say that in Hindi? That would be amazing.
मुझे सांस फूलने लगती है, खासकर जब मैं सीधा लेटता हूँ। मेरे सीने में जकड़न महसूस होती है और ऐसा लगता है कि मेरा दिल सामान्य से अधिक मेहनत कर रहा है। पिछले कुछ हफ्तों से ये धीरे-धीरे बिगड़ता जा रहा है।
I showed my Harvey AI agent to my mother. She's like, he speaks better Hindi than you. Last week, Elon Musk was on a podcast with Peter Diamandis, one of my favorite podcasts, called Moonshots. And now I disagree with most of what Elon says. But when it comes to AI, I do pay attention. And he had a really interesting quote when it came to AI and healthcare. And this is what he said.
When do you think optimists will be a better surgeon than the best surgeons? How long for that?
3 years.
3 years. Okay. Yeah. And by the way, that's
I'd say 3 years at scale.
Yes.
Meaning there will probably be more Optimus robots that are great surgeons than there are all surgeons on Earth.
And the cost of that, but that's an important statement in 3 years' time.
Yeah.
Because medicine, I mean,
I'm not like absolutely certain, but I'd say if you say like 4 years, I'd be absolutely
If it's 4 or 5 years, who cares? It's still an
extreme precision.
Yes.
3 years.
Yes. Better than any, probably, I'd say if you like put a little margin on it, better than any human in 4 years.
Who's in plastic surgery.
By 5 years, it's not even close.
I think your point was medicine is going to be effectively free. The best medicine in the world.
Everyone will have access to medical care that is better than what the president receives right now.
So don't go to medical school.
Yes, pointless.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you, but I would say that applies to any form of education. There's not like some, I do it for social reasons.
Yeah.
You're not going to medical school.
If you want to hang out with like-minded people, I suppose.
So I just found this interesting. In 3 years, Optimus robots will be better than surgeons than any human on Earth. Now, let's take the 3. I don't think anybody in this room believes that in 3 years that this could ever happen. Let's say it's 10 years. Let's say it's 15 years. But the idea that AI, and by the way, Elon is always wrong when it comes to predictions. Like, he's been telling me that there's gonna be full self-driving every year since 2014, okay? All right, he's like, this is the year. He's like, I promise. He's been wrong every single year, okay? So take it with a grain of salt. But let's say 10, 15, 20 years. My belief is that without simulation, you don't have autonomy. You see, simulation becomes the testing ground for robotic surgeons. It becomes the testing ground. It becomes the place where you prove capability, where you train supervision, where you're able to understand those edge cases. And actually, this industry becomes the most important industry in a world that has exponential technology and robotics, because that's where they're getting the data. The data is going to become the new competitive advantage. And guess what? This is why simulation is the future of healthcare. You know, I've had the opportunity of working across many different organizations, hundreds of organizations throughout my entire career. And there's 2 ingredients that make a culture of innovation where you can create high agency people. Now, a high agency person is someone that they don't ask for permission, they just get stuff done. They're an architect of their own outcomes. There's 2 ways of doing this. Number 1, you need a deep commitment to people, to really care. And number 2, a willingness to embrace failure. This is how you create high agency people. And my belief is that in the next 10 years, the most important skill of the future is high agency. The irony of this AI revolution is that we are building AI agents, systems that act autonomously, that make decisions, that execute without hand-holding. And the most important skill for humans in the next 10 years is actually getting stuff done. A high agency person is an architect of their own outcomes. A high agency person is someone that doesn't ask for permission, they just get stuff done. They go off and they execute. This is the most important skill set as we move into the future. And you know, the hypocrisy of this entire conversation is that, you know, Michael Gordon endowed this lecture. Michael Gordon in 1968 created Harvey. And at that time, he was seen as a disruptor. He was seen as an innovator. Many people didn't believe him. I asked Yvette in the backstage, I said, what was Michael Gordon like? He passed away a number of years ago. What was he like? She said he was a force. And I'm asking you, are you willing to be a force? This is the only thing that I know about the future to be true, is that the most dangerous person in the room is the person who is most afraid, yet bold enough to move forward. That's who a force is. Thank you so much for your time.
This is how we do it.
Thank you.
This is how we do it.
Thank you.
This is how we do it. This is how we do it. It's Friday night.
I just want to say, like, that was one of the most amazing and inspiring keynote speeches I've ever.
Wow, I
like,
really
from
appreciate
the
it.
delivery, the storyline, the pacing. That was fantastic. Make sure it works for what you want.
Yes, perfect.
Awesome. That was good. That was good.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay.
That was an amazing presentation.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
To the point where I'm thinking in my head, it's like that little meme where it's like you see all the things flying around, like what can I do with this?
Yes, yes, yes.
Something
Well, I'm
that-
glad that it was
What was
a
your favorite
catalyst.
part, or did you have a favorite takeaway?
My takeaway is to knowledge is power, but bold is, to me, essentially the next phase, being better, being brave enough to step into those things. Always thinking about the part about just almost like feel the fear, but do it anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
Is where that kind of hit me, because I'm always thinking about, well, not necessarily me, but other people saying, well, I don't know about this AI thing. You need to know, because it's still coming, it's still happening. So you have to embrace it. You have to embrace it to not be left behind or truly lost or afraid of it. Try it, try anything, try part of it.
Love the summary.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. That's it.
Yes.
She should do the podcast.
Call me.
All right, I'm going to have two questions.
Yeah, sounds good.
First one is going to be, you talk to a lot of different associations, you do a lot of events. What was it about the simulation community that you saw the connection for what message you bring?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. Second one is, after talking with this group, getting to know the industry better, what would be the next step that you would have, or next piece of insight you would have for healthcare simulationists, right?
Sounds good.
Okay, it's going to be those. So I do a little bit of, I'm a one-man crew, right? I do a little bit of trick, so I'm going to have you actually look here and talk this way while I'm recording here.
Okay, sounds good.
Yep, so here's
So look
me.
there? Okay,
look
sounds
right
good.
here the whole time. I'll ask questions from this side.
Sounds good.
And then essentially that's it. So,
sounds good.
All right, let me pull it back just a bit, make it framed. Right there, and it'll be right over this way. Actually, that'll be perfect. Just watch.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
I'm used to that.
Yeah, right. All right. And then I'll ask the question.
Sounds good.
We'll go from there. All right. You talk to a lot of different events and associations. What was it about the healthcare simulation community and what they do that really connected with the message you bring?
Well, one of the unique things about this particular group is this is a group of problem solvers, innovators, and disruptors. Naturally, within their organizations or institutions, they're the ones that are, pushing the new technology forward. They're pushing problem solving to the next level. And so that's why I love being in this particular group, because this is essentially a group of innovators. And for somebody that has spent his entire career in this space, it's super inspiring to see the people, creating some incredible innovations, and just walking in the exhibit hall and seeing all the cool different ways that people are taking this industry to the next level. Incredibly inspiring.
And since you've learned more about this group, right? What's the next step for them that you see where they could really make the impact based on what they heard from you today?
Well, to me, this AI revolution is impacting every single industry, and I believe that the future of AI and robotics when it comes to simulations is going to be incredibly impactful. And in my keynote, I talked about the idea that simulation is the future of healthcare in the sense that, getting that procedural data, being able to test at scale, this is how all the software is going to learn. It's going to learn from folks that are on the ground floor that are doing simulations. And so I really believe the folks that actually develop a muscle around this particular space are going to be the ones that will lead this industry to the future.
Right. Perfect. That's what I needed. Yeah, man.
Wow, that was good.
Yeah.
Questions to get things started.
I met you in the elevator this morning.
Yes, you did. Yeah, we did.
And I didn't put together, it was early. We were talking, and when the picture came up and I saw your face, I went, "Oh my God, that's head of conversation." And the person next to me said, "If he comes in this like grey brown suit, that was it." And you walked on, and she went, "All right." And then the first thing that went to mind was, "Shit, I hope I didn't say anything inappropriate."
No.
Representing the organisation, but
no. I'm glad that hopefully we can get more sleep later today, because you didn't get sleep, I didn't get sleep, so.
But great, absolutely. The thing we struggle with at IMSH is to have like the plenaries motivational, because that's the point for plenary. And I know in the past some people have like, well, what's a simulation? So what we've had over the years is people weave stuff in. What you did today was above and beyond anything we've had, in that you were given direct examples.
Yes.
Some people have a really hard time to link the messages from the keynotes to our world.
Yeah.
There was no doubt you created like the whole storyboard. So
I appreciate it. I think that customization goes a long way, and so that people can see what you can actually do. To me, that's incredibly important.
Yeah.
And I'm glad. Thank you so much for letting me know that.
Formal introduction, Shawn Kanungo.
Thank you so much.
Round of applause.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'll grab that. All right. Well, I am super excited to be here today. And, somebody asked me, why, what is different from, all the associations and organizations that you have worked with compared to, the folks in this industry. And I think for me, what was really inspiring before coming here, speaking with some folks that are in this space, is that this is a group of problem solvers, innovators, disruptors, pushing healthcare industry forward. And so it's always great to speak with folks and that are the innovators and disruptors in this industry. So I'm excited to not only answer your questions but also to learn from you, because I think there's an incredible amount of knowledge in this room, and I'll try to be as valuable as possible. So thank you so much for everyone coming here. And I'd love to open it up to some questions if you have them, and let's make it as free form as possible. Go ahead.
What have you been most impressed in our space about?
You know what? I think that's a great question. So the question was, what I've been most impressed about? To me, a lot of industries talk about exponential technologies, whether it's around, you're seeing right now around AI and VR and AR and mixed reality and cloud and data, and most people within healthcare, and your counterparts, nobody would describe healthcare as the leading edge when it comes to innovation. What I found really interesting about this particular pocket of the industry is that you have so many people that are disruptors, that are innovators, that are trying to push this industry forward. And what's interesting is that I think a lot of times, correct me if I'm wrong, but this industry also butts heads a lot within their institutions because they're trying to push some leading thinking within their own institutions. And so it can be a lonely road to be an innovator. And I think this is a group of folks that are lonely. That's what I would say. Together. So, together. Yeah, lonely together. Yeah. So that's what I would say. Go ahead.
So you already know this group is the group of really leaders and some of the pioneers that really started. And I'm curious, your background, I think, with Deloitte, and you eventually shifted to this role currently.
Yeah.
And not everybody who you were peers with did the same thing. They're probably still working in their corporate jobs. I'm curious, this group has so much great information to share. And I'd love to hear a little bit about how you sort of transition into really vision setting and inspiring, and maybe some advice for this group.
My greatest advice for anybody that is in this particular space, because I think there's so many people in this room that are, again, those innovators and disruptors. I always say this is one of the greatest ways to change people is to get more people drunk. And let me explain that. The more that you can understand the people within your institutions, the more that you can understand, some of the other folks within your organizations, the more that you can push things forward. I believe that more that you can align your mission with other people's missions, that's how you move things forward. So what I've learned, over time, and what I learned at Deloitte is that, to me, what I learned at Deloitte is that it was actually very little to do with technology, and it was everything to do around how do we move executives forward. And it really was spending more time with people to understand their fears and their vulnerabilities and where they're going with their careers. And so that's probably the greatest thing that I've taken from my former career to what I do now. And to your point around inspiring, to me it's really about connection. Just listening to the presentation, I try to bring a lot of my personality and who I am. I never try to sugarcoat. I talk about my family and what's important for my kids and my father who passed away, and making that connection is the greatest way to inspire. To be authentic and genuine is the greatest way to inspire. So if you can relate it back to those things, I think that's probably, that's been helpful for me. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for being here, Shawn. And as I said to you this morning, your research that you did on us, I think got you well informed as this group, and it really shows. You mentioned about healthcare speeding along with innovation at a glacier pace. And I wonder, especially now with the challenges of AI and sort of it changing on the month by month or quarter by quarter basis, where does change management meet technology evolution now that it's revolutionizing on a short kind of cycle? And what industries have you observed maybe that have been more successful at change management to really take advantage of things, moving technology forward, but moving process improvement meets technology forward? You must have some industry examples that have embraced that. I hear you saying a big part of change management is face-to-face communications, and I think that there's no doubt about that. But do you have any other shining examples?
Yeah, no, I love that. I appreciate that. I guess the one unfortunate part right now when it comes to exponential technology is that it is moving at such a pace that I don't think any organization or any individual can keep up with. My job today is to be in this space where I'm trying to understand what's happening in the AI space, working with leaders, speaking with executives, experimenting myself in this particular space, and I know 0.001% of what is happening. And even speaking to leaders within OpenAI or Google, and some of my colleagues, they can't even keep up. They come up to me and they say, we can't even keep up with all this change that's happening. And so it is almost impossible to keep up with the technological change and how you're going to be changing sort of internally. What I've seen with organizations is it's less about the industries, but it's really about the muscle that you build internally as an organization. I love this idea of, it's called denting the outside. It's the idea that you build a muscle outside of your organization that is constantly experimenting with whether it's new technologies or new ways of doing things, that you don't disrupt the core. Because if you try to disrupt the core of what you are doing within your organization or your industry, the immune system of the organization just rejects it. We just reject new ideas. And so the best way of moving forward is really around trying those experiments outside of the core and then hopefully bringing those things in. I'll give you an example of this. In oil and gas, they are traditionally very slow to move as well. And I remember our team going to them and talking to them about this thing called robotic process automation. Now, RPA was a predecessor to generative AI. It was kind of like dumb bots. Like now we have smart bots. Back in the day was dumb bots. And I remember going into the meeting with the CFO and their executive team, and we were literally kicked out of the meeting by talking about this thing called robotic process automation, RPA, because they asked who else in our industry is doing this. And at that point, very, very little of them did. And over time, we were able to convince them to start experimenting with this technology in an area that was not disruptive to the core of their business, which was in finance. And once they saw those experiments work within not a core group within their organization and saw it work, they said, how do we actually expand this across the organization? And they expanded that program across different departments, and actually the leader that was part of that organization, he was the finance guy, and then he became sort of the innovation guy. Cool story for him as well. And so what I see is that organizations just developing this muscle when it comes to innovation and experimentation.
So you're talking about synthetic data, and I've understood that we've essentially ingested the entire written content of human existence or will by sometime in mid-June, and that we're now using AI to create new written works to then feed back into an AI system, but that the initial explorations in that it actually tended to degrade the quality, that it wasn't enhancing it further. So if we're creating simulated data, how do we make sure we're not either amplifying a bias that's there or creating worse data that's actually going to degrade the system?
That's a great question. Well, the data in itself is very biased, right? It is absolutely true that these large language models, every single one of them, Gemini, OpenAI, DeepSeek, Claude, what they have all done is they've done something very illegal that we kind of have just passed over and said, hey, they've done it, now what do we do next? Which is they've scraped the internet of every piece of information that it could find, and we didn't not allow that. And I think the genie's out of the bottle. They did it, and they've scraped all this data. That data that's on the internet is also inherently biased. It is based on human beings who are naturally biased. And so the sources that they are, the sources of information that they've scraped may not totally be accurate. And this is why when people say, well, I asked something to ChatGPT or Gemini and they gave me a wrong response, it might be wrong, because also the human being that created that source file might be wrong as well, right? So I think one of the things that we need to do when it comes to AI is we have to treat it differently than every single software that we've seen in the past. You see, with a calculator or Excel, it is deterministic, meaning when you ask it to do something, 1 + 1, it gives you 2. But with generative AI, it's actually probabilistic. What it's essentially doing, the technology, what it's doing, it is based on probabilities, trying to find the next best number, solution, etc. And so it's inherently probabilistic, and instead of treating it like the calculator or Microsoft Excel, we should be more treating it like an intern or a human being. When you ask someone, how's the weather outside? Every single person in the room is going to come up with, a slightly varied response. And that's how we should be treating generative AI. Now, when it comes to synthetic data, there are some incredible advantages of using synthetic data, because in many cases, it can replicate real live data pretty well. AI is never the solution. It's never the gold standard. We should always be looking at those edge cases. We should always be taking a look at other sources of information, because it's never the final output. It should never be it should never be gospel at the end of the day. And that's how we should be treating synthetic data. That's how we should be treating any data that we get from any of these generative AI tools. There's a method known as evals, and you're able to use other AIs or other AI agents to check what you are doing. Just as a very rudimentary case, I put my medical information into these large language models. And by the way, your patients are going to do this too, right? They're going to put their information in it. ChatGPT just came out with this thing called ChatGPT Health, where you can connect your medical records. It's going to be rolling out very soon to folks. It's on a wait list for many folks. But what I do is when I put my medical information into ChatGPT, into Grok, into Claude, into Gemini, I try to see where the variances are. Where do you differ? What are the discrepancies between these different large language models? And it's a great way of checking to see if somebody got something wrong. And by the way, I did do this recently, and unfortunately, the large language models all concluded that I need a Mediterranean diet. So if anybody in this room can help me with that, that would be fantastic. But that's one way of doing it, right? You're taking another large language model, another AI, to help check to see if the work that they're doing is great. The other thing I would say about these AI agents or large language models, they work on context. The more context that you give it, the better. Context is simply giving it as much source information or as much background information as possible. And the more background information and context that it has, the better it's going to execute. And that's just a good tip, I would say.
So you're saying pre-briefing is important?
Is pre-briefing an industry thing? Okay, sorry. Okay.
The answer is
Yes, okay. Yes, a pre-briefing that I just learned is great. I appreciate that. Thank you. Yes, at the back, yeah.
Shawn, I still see that it is still hallucinating. We are talking about AI reaching singularity in 10 years or whatever time frame.
Yes.
But it is hallucinating so badly. It creates fake citations, studies. You know, when we try to find the sources and then I go and click on the citation, it doesn't exist. So how much we can trust this thing? AI is kind of, I don't know whether AI is kind of trying to proving it smart by giving us fake citations, fake resources, and then the trust is the biggest problem that I'm having. And thank you for giving some ideas on how we can use different. But what's your thought on, we know there was something in New York where 2 lawyers ended up, that where they cited wrong cases.
Yeah.
It was all these things. So how much do you think we should trust now with all this going on?
Yeah, I appreciate that. You're absolutely right that there are still lots of hallucinations, and what I found really interesting, 3 years since the dawn of ChatGPT, thinking about the amount of people that are using this on a daily basis. This is the fastest, ChatGPT in itself is the fastest, application tech, of all time. And what we have observed over the last 3 years is that the amount of hallucinations that it's producing has substantially decreased over time. Part of the reason why that's happening is because these platforms are becoming more agentic. They are able to have more reasoning. They're able to check more sources. You're able to also check to see what sources are available. More and more every single year, or maybe even every single minute, these platforms are getting better at not hallucinating. And if you think about the amount of times that people are using this every single day, thinking about the amount of times that people use it every single day and how many people there are, you would have imagined that there would be just, the news would be flooded with, court cases and documents. And so all this to say, just like I would trust if a resident or an intern, you have to provide the same lens. And you're never going to be able to trust it completely because it doesn't work like every single software that we've seen throughout history. It's a fundamentally new type of technology.
That's a great question. Go ahead.
You just mentioned it, critical thinking. We talked about trust earlier. You have a room full of educators here. We're trying to envision how to teach the next generation to be verifiers and have the knowledge necessary to be able to distinguish things. We've seen how, my phone tells me where to go. I don't ask questions. My kids don't know how to read maps anymore. So how do we teach the next generation in this world of AI who are going to have to discriminate right from wrong?
Yeah. This might be one of the biggest downsides when it comes to AI. And I'm speaking as a father. Right now, by the way, when it comes to my kids are younger, so they're 9, 6, and 2. I really don't care for them to learn any of these AI skills right now. To me, it's not really important. What's most important is for them to learn how to be a good human and have grit and resilience, how to make a friend, learn how to get backstabbed, learn how to look at somebody in the eyes and shake someone's hand. To me, those are the most important skill sets for my kids in the future, and also those critical thinking skills to decipher, what is real, what is fake. How do you look into information to understand what those sources are going to be? That's going to be an important skill set for my kids, because I see the fact that we're going to be more and more relying on AI to get the information bubbled up at our fingertips. And unfortunately, just like I showed you the graph, where we are moving to a world where we're trying to turn everything into its most efficient form. Journalism, athletics, newspapers, every form we're trying to turn into its most frictionless, efficient form. And when you do that, you suck out the meat and the context and the trust and the critical thinking skills. When somebody sees a headline on Twitter or X, they assume that it is real, and then that information goes into WhatsApp groups and into iMessages, and that's how misinformation spreads. And I see, people that are lawyers, that are doctors, that are incredible intellectuals, sending me AI fakes, deep fakes, misinformation. Like, this is, no matter how smart you are, you're gonna get fooled. Number one, I think it comes down to education and teaching folks that getting to the source and getting different points of view is going to be incredibly important as we move into the future. Not simply relying on what the AI spits out is going to be a skill set. Actually depending on your intuition and creativity and imagination and innovation is going to be incredibly important as we move into the future. And so I really do think it's a downside. I always give people this hypothetical situation, which is, what if the Wright brothers, the brothers that invented flight, what if they were given ChatGPT in the late 1800s? Would they still have invented flight? And my hypothesis is that these bicycle mechanics, what they would have done if they had generative AI in the 1800s is they would have asked ChatGPT, hey, is flight possible? And what ChatGPT at the end of the 1800s would have done, it would have summarized all the scholarly research, all the evidence up until that point, and it would have concluded that actually flight is fundamentally impossible. And I don't know, maybe the Wright brothers would go on and they would just work on more bicycles. Maybe they would be dissuaded from actually working on this incredibly difficult problem. But of course, the Wright brothers persevered. They innovated and they revolutionized the world because they ignored the data. And I'm a believer in AI, as you saw. I think it is the second most powerful force ever created. And the first will be our ability to ignore it. I don't think we understand how important that's going to be. And that's why I believe in the idea of agency. The reality, I spent my entire career in strategy. And today, you can get a really great strategy from OpenAI and Gemini and Clock and Grok and actually get those four genies to get in a room and say, hey, come up and devise an incredible strategy for me. But what is most important is agency. How are you going off and taking that information and executing on it, taking action at the end of the day? To me, I don't know of a more important skill as we move into the future. So I love that question. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So there was an article published in the Wall Street Journal on January the 5th. Basically, it's titled, hospitals are becoming a proving ground for what AI can do and what AI can't do. Did you see that?
No, I didn't see that.
Yeah, it's a neat little article, and it gets to a lot of what you're talking about here in this, and that there's ultimately what it comes down to is you have to trust but verify. Okay,
Right.
It's an old military guy. That's all I ever did. Train people, and I trusted them to do their job. They had to verify that they did it the right way, right? And that's not a energy-less act, right? There's a lot of work that the AI is doing for you, but you still have to put a lot of energy into that aspect of this. And so I wanted to share that.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
I'm curious what you think about that approach. I mean, it's just these are tools. Like a hammer is a tool and a screwdriver is a tool. You use them the right way, but you got to use them the right way. I could use a hammer as a screwdriver in certain instances.
Yes.
Trust me, I've done it. But it's suboptimal.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just want to throw that out.
No, that's a great. I appreciate that, and I'll check out that article. And I totally agree that we should be using this as a tool, and like a hammer, we should figure out how to use a hammer, and get some best practices on how to use a hammer. The only thing about the tool piece is that the way to use a hammer is always changing. That's right. And that's the difference. It's that, back in the day you'd say, I know how to use a hammer. But now it's like every single, month it feels like there's a new way of using the hammer. And you have to be able to develop a sensing mechanism to, and a muscle to say, how do we use this hammer today? Because it's changing all the time. So I appreciate that. Yes?
So I just wanted to come back to the follow-up on critical thinking and an article that recently came out from MIT that is already showing that younger folks growing up and using AI have less critical thinking, problem-solving skills than those of us that didn't. So to me, that's sort of an education training problem to solve, and that might be K-12, but really I think it's something that even now we grapple with so much of what we do, dynamic decision making, critical thinking. Some of the hardest things that we teach that folks that come to us, already those experienced providers may not have. So I guess the question follow-up to that is how do we do that in the age of AI to make sure that we don't have an entire generation of humans, healthcare professionals, et cetera, that don't know how to.
Yeah. And I don't know that answer.
The Hunger Games. Was something hard.
Yeah. I don't know that answer because I think about it in the lens of my kids, which is how do I teach them that this is going to become incredibly important? How do I teach them to not rely on the AI when it's bubbling up the best? When the AI is already bubbling up what the most watched things are on Netflix and the most listened things are on Spotify, and Alexa, get me, add this to a grocery, and let's ask ChatGPT to create us a Pokemon character, and we're relying on it. How do I do that when we're using it every single day? It's a blessing and a curse.
So I want to take this in a different direction.
Yeah, sure.
You talk a lot about, do you trust it, don't you? But one of the things that I think, I'm Michelle Ingersoll from the University of Michigan. One of the things that I think is really, for me as an educator, how can we adapt our learning modalities or our learning experiences to be more individual? So where I see the power and the promise of AI, and I'll be curious to hear your thoughts on that, is being able to create experiences, and I do a lot of work with chatbots like in VR. So how can I create that experience and then have the students go in there and do it and get that individualized feedback? And so I think there's a lot of power there.
Yeah.
To talk about critical thinking, clinical judgment. They can go in and practice, they can get some feedback because I've provided some rubrics and some guidelines around what it should be.
Yeah.
So thoughts on that?
Well, I think that's one of the most exciting spaces, which is the connection between AI and education. And I think the holy grail of education is around how do we personalize it so that it aligns with someone's learning appetite and how they consume and how they learn at the end of the day. And I think what the promise of agentic AI is that not only are we going to be able to understand the learners better and understand how they learn and the best ways that you learn. And educators, that everybody learns in different ways. Some people are more audio, some people are more visual, etc. But first, with understanding those learners, and then being able to come up with, leverage some of these tools that are coming out there right now that can say, based on this person's profile and their persona, how do we customize our curriculum so that it aligns with them even better, whether it's through gamification, whether it's through visuals, whether it's through different methods. And so, for example, I know a lot of educators are using Notebook LM. I'm sure lots of folks are familiar with Notebook LM, which is you put in a workbook, an audio, whatever it might be, and it actually, by the way, if you want to do a quick, so the presentation, my presentation. If you go to ShawnKanungo.com/simulation, it has all the notes, all the takeaways, and I try to provide different formats so that people can learn. So ShawnKanungo.com/simulation. And what I have in there is I have a podcast breaking down my presentation. I have a video breaking down the presentation. I have the actual presentation. I got the notes of the presentation. And so I'm trying to cater to different ways that people might learn. And so I think what's beautiful is that AI is going to be able to create all these different types of assets, a video, a podcast, an infographic, to create all these assets. And when it comes to VR, it's like it's going to be able to create at some point, these VR assets that can help us as well. I think about my daughter. Like my daughter called me yesterday. We got a landline phone, by the way. This is a hack. We went back to a landline. Part of the reason why we went back to a landline is because we wanted to introduce more friction in our house. Because remember when you had a landline back in the day, you would actually have to, and call a friend, you would actually have to talk to somebody else in the house. You'd have to talk to the parent or another brother or a sister to get to your actual friend. And we want to introduce that level of friction, that micro interaction by talking to somebody else. And so we now have a landline. So anyways, my daughter calls me on on her landline. And she said, Daddy, I got a test tomorrow. And she's been spoiled because we've been understanding what her learning style is. And so she's an incredibly visual person, and she loves cartoons and visuals, and the way that we've been able to help her learn concepts is through visual. And so we've been leveraging infographics using Notebook LM. We've been creating videos using VO3, and she loves it. She loves consuming it, but she's so excited about learning because we found out what she likes and what she's good at, and we're leveraging AI to create those assets and those workbooks. Because she's getting these workbooks from school, and there's no way that this is at remotely interesting to her. So that's been interesting to me, just seeing how they interact with the material. Before I leave, the work that you do is incredibly important. And just speaking with so many folks that are in this industry, I truly believe that this industry, that simulation is the future of healthcare. And in order for our healthcare to be as incredible as it is, we need folks in this room to continue to innovate and continue to disrupt the status quo. So thank you so much for having me. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.